Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today I'm going to talk to you about a pretty unique mower, and it's not often that John Deere has a bad mower that they produced, but this is definitely fitting, and it was probably a bad move on their part, but I'm here to tell you all about it. This is called the John Deere WE80 and the WE85. The WE80 is a zone start model. The WE85 is a blade brake clutch model, which that means when you let go, the engine still runs, but the blade doesn't. Other than that, they're identical. Same transmission, same wheels, same engine, same everything else. So I'll get into why these mowers, how these mowers came to be, and then their faults. So these mowers, believe it or not, were originally British. They were originally designed by a company called Eastman, and that's not like the film company. It's a separate company in Britain. I believe they started in like 2002, as what I can see from my internet research. And they all use the same basic deck and Italian transmission, Chinese Kawasaki engine, which I'll get into that here in a second. In 2005, Eastman bought mower manufacturer Ingersoll, which was previously made in Wisconsin. And right after that, in 2006, they moved all of their production to Portland, Maine, USA, and they were building Ingersoll, not Ingersoll Rand, the pneumatic company, just Ingersoll, different company. And it's basically the same mower as the Eastman, just orange. And they did not sell very many Ingersoll with this mower frame at all. I've actually only ever come across one, and it was on eBay of all places in Alabama. So as an Eastman, these mowers were called the SPX 21, and in 2010, that's the only pricing data I could find. In 2010, they were selling for $1,250, and Ingersoll, I forget the model number, but I'll put it on your screen because I've got it there. It also sold for around $1,250, which would make sense because it's the same mower, just orange instead of dark green. So while still under Eastman, these mowers were produced as white labeled for John Deere. They made them from 2009 to 2011. So 9, 10, 11. They made them for 3 years, and they sold for $1,399. So $1,400. There's the John Deere tax. Just because they were green and yellow, you could charge a couple $100 more. So how you can tell the year for the John Deeres, the serial number either starts with 10,000, 20,000, or 30,000. And that's 2009, 2010, 2011. That's how you can tell. They didn't sell very many of these mowers, obviously because they were very expensive, but you still see them in commercial use in different parts of the country, as parts are still readily available, albeit very expensive, as a Kubota, and I'll get into that in just a minute. Eastman also produced these mowers in red as a Gravely, with or without the blade brake clutch, from 2012 to 2017. And I'm not sure of the exact model, but when I look at parts diagrams, I see models 911 282, there's 488 of them made, 911 284, there's 52 made, and there's some other ones which add up to about 307 made. So you're talking about less than 1,000 of these mowers were made as Gravely. So there's a company that came along in 2017 called Schiller Grounds Care, who owned the Bobcat brand, Bob-Cat, not Bobcat like the green, or not the white and orange company. So they owned Bobcat, the green mowers. They bought out Eastman in 2017, and they brought the manufacturing back to Johnson Creek, Wisconsin, also still in the USA. Schiller Grounds Care, while they were also making their own mowers under this frame as Bobcat, so it was a dark green with black wheels, they produced the same mowers in orange for Kubota. And the Kubota ones were called a WG6 21, which is the blade brake version, and a WG6 21, which is the zone start. They made those for Kubota from 2017 to 2019. Kubota dealers, you can still buy parts for these, transmissions, wheels, everything. One more step in this, Doosan Bobcat, which that is the white and orange brand, they bought Bobcat mowers at the end of 2019 from Schiller Grounds Care for an undisclosed amount. and they acquired their Johnson Creek, Wisconsin assembly plant, the Bobcat mower's name, and some other brands under the same transaction. So Doosan Bobcat, even though they currently own the rights to the frame, the patents, everything else right now, they're not making them. So there could potentially be this mower in white and orange, but it does not exist. But that's who currently owns it. That brings me back to the John Deere, the 2009 to 2011. Well, it was not off to a great start because early on in 2009, they had a stop sale on these mowers for one, if not two reasons, but I know one for sure, is the blade clutch, the blade brake clutch, BBC, liked to explode. And so there was some kind of manufacturing defect where it would shatter and it could either go through the side of the deck or into your leg or something like that. I don't know how many of those happened, but there was a stop sale issued to dealers in 2009 for these mowers. So you're not going to find a whole lot of 2009 mowers anyway. Most of them you're going to find are 2010, maybe 2011 models. Once they started back production, there's a lot of people had problems with the wheels cracking. They're cast aluminum wheels on a very heavy mower, and I guess they shock or something and they fail. The wheels are very expensive. They're almost $100 a piece to replace, and that was another failure point for these. The other part was they were extremely heavy. They were 131 pounds, which mowers today with the like a commercial mower today is probably closer to 100 pounds. These are 131 pounds. They had a steel door on the back. They had steel reinforcements on the side of the deck, a heavy transmission, heavy wheels, heavy engine. It's just, you had to have a self-propelled mower, otherwise this mower would not work. And believe it or not, there are versions out there that were push mower, which I still can't believe. Not for the John Deere, but under the other brands. The other issue, which is still an issue today for any mowers that have this engine, this Kawasaki FJ180V engine, it's a Chinese-built Kawasaki, and it has a Chinese carb. It has plastic drain bolts, plastic everything, and so what should be a 5-minute job, you strip the plastic plug, you end up having to drill stuff out to pull it out, and then you have to go get another plastic drain plug. There were design flaws with this engine. Primarily, the issue with this Kawasaki 180 was the carburetor. They had a top-mounted air filter which didn't put enough pressure to hold the air filter in place, so dirt and other debris got into the carburetor, and then you had running issues, idling issues, and that's the number one issue you have with these mowers. And you can buy an aftermarket carb on eBay, whatever, 20, 30 bucks. But if you wanted the Kawasaki carb, which they still make, it's over $100 to buy a new carb. And it's just ridiculous for such a poor design. Is there a fix to it? I don't know. I haven't found one. If you found one, let me know. So the reason I say it's an ongoing issue is because there are other brands, eBravo, Toro, Skag, they all use still this Kawasaki Chinese-built engine, and in my opinion, it is garbage. It's just a poor design with the air filter, and it still hasn't been approved upon. So it constantly, as these mowers get some use on them, they constantly have carburetor issues, which it makes them difficult to start. They're not the easiest engines to start, especially coming from the old John Deeres of the late 80s, early 90s, the John Deeres of the 90s that had that Kawasaki engine, the FC150, that just starts right away, first pull, no questions, no problems, anything like that. These were they were a miss, and I've had a few of them here in the shop, and it's just they leave a lot to be desired, in my opinion. On top of that, they moved away from the Kanzaki tough torque transmission that the mowers in the 90s had, and they went to an Italian transmission made by a company called BCD, B-I-C-I-D-I, B-C-D-E, BCD. And it's a 3-speed, and I don't know if anyone ever actually tested it out before they actually put this on the market, but the speeds are way too slow, and mock Jesus. It's just, for a normal pace that most people want to walk behind a mower, it's either too slow or way too fast. There's no in between. And it's unfortunate. And then on top of that, there's plastic gears in it. It's non-serviceable. You can't buy parts for the transmission. You have to buy the entire transmission. So I have 2 of them here, one of which I had to put a new transmission in because the worm gear was stripped. And I couldn't buy parts for it. Couldn't find a used mower to steal the transmission off of in order to make this one work. So I had to buy a new transmission. It's out of a Kubota, and it was almost $450 for a transmission. So it's one of those, like, I kind of regret doing, but you know, I learned a lot from it. And then I'm still having issues with it, but that's for another day. What I have learned is the blade brake clutch. So you can buy it directly from Warner Electric, and it's about $120. If you buy it from John Deere, it's like $350. But you can buy it as a Gravely mower, and it's $90. It's cheaper. You know, it doesn't make sense. Also the wheels, you know, John Deere charges over $100 for the wheels. You can buy them as a Gravely. They're just black instead of silver. They have yellow. The John Deere ones have yellow plastic caps on them, but they're raw aluminum, cast aluminum. But you have to buy the wheel separate from the tire. So if you put all that together, it's going to cost you like $120, $130 per wheel to replace, which is just ridiculously expensive. You buy it as a Gravely, it's like $30 or $40 a piece. So it's the same part. You know, you pay for that John Deere tax, I guess, but John Deere probably doesn't also have a big inventory of parts for these mowers since they didn't sell very many. And you know, each of the mowers I've seen for the 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 serial numbers for these John Deeres, there can't be more than a few thousand of them. You know, they were expensive, they're heavy, they weren't what people wanted, especially coming from the mowers that they produced that were home runs in the 90s. The pros of these mowers was definitely the power that the engine had. You saw that they had 6.5 horsepower compared to 5 or 4.5 of the ones in the 90s. So power was never a complaint with these. Plenty of power, plenty of torque, but they also had a heavy mower to move as well. As I said, they're 131 pounds. They had an oil filter, so that's great. You're gonna need it because that crappy design for the air filter, you're gonna get stuff in the oil. The other design flaw with it is how the oil filter attaches to the engine. That shaft is plastic. So if you're mowing in the bushes or something and something pushes on that, it's gonna snap your oil filter off, your oil filter housing. And it's a poor design. Specific to the John Deeres, you can tell that the engine was an afterthought because the fuel tank that always comes with the Kawasaki 180, they actually had to design a different bracket to move it over out of the way because it didn't fit the deck. So it is unfortunate that John Deere, you know, they were allowed to put their name on this because it was really a poor mower compared to the other offerings that John Deere had. And as I said, it was expensive, it was heavy, it was powerful, but it was cheaply built. And they obviously have not withstood the test of time like some of the mowers of the late 80s and all of the 90s, early 2000s that John Deere had. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you. Thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you soon.